What's going on with Square Enix? Once they were the purveyors of some of the greatest RPG lines in the history of the medium, with titles to their name like Final Fantasy, Mana, Dragon Quest, Kingdom Hearts, and many, many more. But the company has experienced a torrid recent history in 2024, confirming layoffs, restructuring, and game cancellations, with Square Enix stock yet to recover to the relative highs of 2020. What has happened to Square? Why has it happened? And what will the future hold for this Japanese gaming giant? Now, you may think for a Nintendo channel this is kind of off topic, but remember that Nintendo actually do hold a significant number of shares in Square Enix, though they decreased this amount from 2023 to 2024 from $4 million to $3 million, bringing their total shares back to the level seen in 2018. Their 91,000 shares are a fraction of 1% of the total shares in the company, so it would be wrong to overestimate their impact. But the reason given for the ownership was to ensure a stable business relationship with the company which develops software for Nintendo platforms. And certainly Nintendo's relationship with Square Enix has been a successful one, with Square Enix providing a number of Switch-timed exclusives such as Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy, bringing many of their top titles to Switch, and in the wider industry context, being the game publisher with the 16th highest reported revenue in the world, ahead of Bandai Namco, Sega, Konami, and Capcom. The company emerged out of the merger of two prior companies. There was Squaresoft, whose shock decision to take Final Fantasy VII from Nintendo to PlayStation in the late 90s gave Sony a megaton Japanese launch, with contemporary game magazines reporting queues in Japan longer for that title than for the then huge blockbuster Titanic. But Nintendo's heart would go on, and gradually, thanks to their decision to belatedly adopt optical disc technology over cartridges, the Nintendo Square romance was not over. Then there was Enix, developers of the fabled Dragon Quest games. With 134 employees to Square's 888 the year before the merger, Enix was very much the junior partner, and yet it was Enix's founder, Yasuhiro Fukushima, who is still Square Enix's largest shareholder, with 19.69% of Square Enix stock. The merger followed a huge explosion and sudden contraction in Square's fortunes due to the outsized success of Final Fantasy VII and its immediate sequels, followed by the rather disappointing performance of a slew of movie tie-ins which failed to capture wide audiences. Nevertheless, the new company had a lot of successes and hoovered up other companies in its expansion, gaining, and in some cases then selling on, major franchises like Eidos's Tomb Raider, Taito's Space Invaders, as well as creating their own using their new global satellite studios such as Square Enix Europe's Life is Strange. Its mission statement, as set out in their 2013 annual report, was to provide high-quality content, services, and products to help customers create their own wonderful, unforgettable experiences. The company is now more diversified than ever, with a spread of digital services, publications, and merchandising making up its core business. But in August 2024, company president Takashi Kiryu confessed that sales in the first quarter of this financial year were down, although he attributed this partly to the inflated figures in spring 2022 due to lockdown audiences, especially in their MMO space. This followed an admission in the presentation accompanying the annual report that, and I quote, "In the HD games subsegment, we released multiple new titles, including major titles such as Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but profits unfortunately did not meet our expectations. It appears that sales were lower than expected, and, as they say, an impairment was made to the content production account. An impairment in this case meaning the sudden devaluing of a core asset, presumably referring to the decision to cut Final Fantasy XVI's price from $70 to $50 in the American market. This resulted in these games making a loss. Moreover, while they did have a lot of new digital and smart device games, the increase in sales from these were unable to offset the decline in earnings from existing titles that were now aging. One area of strength was in digital downloads, and so the company pledged to increase efforts to strengthen digital downloads of both new and catalog titles. It isn't all gloomy in the garden, though, as amusements and publications were up, as were merchandising. Still, with roughly three-quarters of Square Enix's business coming from digital entertainment, they could be forgiven for feeling a bit hard done by. In his August Q&A with investors, President Kiryu did make some comments generally about the future trajectory of the company's output, including that the profitability of HD game subsegment will hinge on how well our forthcoming titles sell. In terms of sales initiatives, we will continue our efforts to bolster profitability, including by expanding sales of catalog titles when launching new titles, and by offering past titles on multiple platforms. Perhaps the most telling vision of the future was an answer to this question, which referred to spending less on development and an increase in content production. He said, "As part of our efforts to optimize our development footprint, we have created a regular forum for the heads of our department organization, myself, and others to discuss our progress on projects, launch timelines, market trends, and how we intend to approach development going forward." With game development lead times growing longer, we are pursuing our transition from quantity to quality by engaging in robust validation efforts that include our publishing functions and a variety of other perspectives, as well as undertaking an uncompromising approach to our process management. To bolster profitability, our development and support functions are working in concert to make our development processes more efficient, including by leveraging AI. We are also working to strengthen our internal development capabilities and to control our outsourcing costs. However, we think that it will take a fair amount of time before our income statement benefits from these initiatives in terms of development cost. As an aside, it's rather striking the difference in tone between these comments and those that characterize Nintendo's investor briefings. A focus on quality is great, but, quotes, robust validation efforts could mean a wide variety of things from rigorous testing, good, to second guessing and audience testing to death, bad. An uncompromising approach to process management suggests a systemization and a management-led approach, which is a far cry from the rather open and creative way that Nintendo often operate, with games being restarted and sweated over creatively. Using AI also may not be enormously promising, although, as with any tool, it depends on how it is being utilized. So, what is Square Enix's future plan going to look like? In the investor report of 2024, President Kiryu suggested that selling multiple IPs has allowed them to focus in on their core IPs, which promote the strongest profitability and customer loyalty. And he also regretted the decision to schedule games poorly, which he blamed on poor quantitative data and management infrastructure. He refocused the company on the long-term core vision of creating, quote, unforgettable experiences. The theory being that such experiences encourage loyalty and so-called, quote, moral support, and set out a vision of a 3-year plan which he called Square Enix Reboots and Awakens. This had 6 main pillars. In their mainline game development wing, the HD section, they wanted to establish a development footprint capable of consistently and regularly releasing titles that meet our customers' expectations, while in the SD or mobile game space, they simply wanted to resume their previous growth trajectory. For the rest, the aims were to grow or maintain momentum while becoming leaner and creating new IP along the way. Fairly standard ambitions which aren't exactly revolutionary. So what does all the jargon really mean? When the company talks about optimizing the development footprint, it appears that this is doubling down on the core franchises and trying to ensure quality output from games in these titles. New IP development will be de-emphasized, with Kiryu-san saying, "We intend to confine our development investment to a certain scale and try to achieve fun that is novel and creative." However, he notes, "We will also work to strengthen our lineup of catalog titles by leveraging our rich IP library, basically making use of selling prior titles." So this comes down, it seems, to a reorganization. He attributes to siloization the problems that existed previously, so developing a range of internal support capabilities, presumably including facilities such as dedicated motion capture and systems architecture departments in the manner that Nintendo has sought to put in place with Nintendo Pictures and Nintendo Systems, would, as Kiryu put it, support the creativity of producers and enable gains in development investment efficiency. It's an interesting approach, but also feels to me like the kind of initiative that would be put forward by a management consultancy. Other changes in this vein include investing in management infrastructure, refining our management accounting systems to give us greater visibility on productivity and other metrics. We will also invest capital, they say, into improving our development environment as we look to maximize employee productivity in development and other functions. Look, there is a reason that management consultancies exist, and they obviously do generate returns for their clients, but one wonders how meaningfully you can visualize productivity on a creative endeavor, a type of endeavor that, by its nature, will lead to more misses than hits. Their broader plans largely rest on maximizing sales by looking at expanding more of their library into PC and iOS availability, using data to micro-target marketing and integrating merchandise to, I quote, "generate synergies," which presumably means looking for ways to sell toys off the back of it. A Slime Chocobo team-up title at last, perhaps. They also retain a budget for mergers and acquisitions, and while they say they will exercise strict financial discipline in selecting investments, kind of obvious really, they do mention achieving stability by pushing into additional domains, which is curious and might suggest that they push non-gaming sides of their business, such as publishing, a strategy also in common with Nintendo, as they use audiovisual, theme park attractions, and merchandising to balance out the vagaries of the video game business. So where does all of this leave Square Enix? The medium-term prognosis, by their own admission, is fairly bleak. They will drill down to their major properties and look for some kind of creative renewal by leveraging their old reliable franchises, but their approach is very much using top-down management strategies to drive theoretical efficiencies. Their stock has recovered after the temporary difficulty of the May announcements and is fairly stable, and the company clearly has a depth of IP and a breadth of developer talent to sustain itself long term. It's not entirely clear how the company's creative studios are being configured now, but until recently the company seems to have had 5 business units in situ. Of course, while Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and Kingdom Hearts are developed internally, many of the other franchises are contracted out as well. The advantage of this, of course, is that it makes it more possible for Square to cut its ties with the development teams without needing to institute mass layoffs, or further mass layoffs anyway, and potentially it will free up more teams for Nintendo to cultivate should they wish, or at least put several game developers back onto the market. For more from Nintendo Forecast, do check out these videos on screen right now. Please do like, share, subscribe, comment, and otherwise I will look forward to seeing you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.